Okay, so I'm not seeing the attendees numbers tick up too much more, so let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here with us today. My name is Erin Skubal. I am the Director of the Certification Division at the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and I have two of my amazing production team managers here with me today, Ing Lindsey and Britnie Tjie, and they're here to answer all of the questions that I know you guys have related to the commission flexibilities and executive order and any other kind of processing questions that you might have given the current COVID-19 circumstances and the telework and everything you're dealing with at the local level. Just to kind of give you an idea of how the webinar is going to work, I'm going to go through just a couple quick updates for you guys, and then we're basically going to take your questions. You can use the raise hand feature and ask your question verbally. Or you can basically type it into the chat and we'll do our best to scroll through and answer all of those questions for you verbally. If we don't get to your question, we will do our best to post a Q&A, but you know, as we know, we're entering our busy time and it takes some time to go through all those questions. So we will kind of play it by ear and see where we're at the end of the webinar. We have 1 hour. But we do plan on doing these in the future. So if something didn't get answered, we would encourage you to send that question to our email address at credentials@ctc.ca.gov. But again, we do plan on doing additional office hours in the future so that we can hopefully answer any, continuing questions that you might have. So to get started, I do want to let you all know that we have some good news. We think it's really good news, and we think you're going to think it's really good news too. We found out earlier in the week that the provisions of the governor's executive order that basically push the TPA, the APA, and the RICA out to the clear credential as renewal requirements, those provisions are being extended through budget trailer bill language. So that means that those provisions, once the budget trailer bill, this is the second budget trailer bill related to education, and it hasn't been signed yet, it hasn't gone through the Senate or the Assembly yet, but it is being worked through that process right now. Once that is enacted, it would be retroactive to July 1 of 2020. And it would allow those provisions that the governor authorized initially in his executive order to continue through August 31st of 2021. So it's going to get an entire additional year for those provisions to be in place. So anyone who is still experiencing extenuating circumstances due to COVID-19 would still be able to obtain their preliminary credential and have either the APA, the TPA, or the RICA, or some combination thereof, added as renewal requirements that they need to fulfill prior to being issued the clear credential. So the language did not change. It's the exact same provisions, the exact same language that the EO originally put forward, but it's just the date that changes. So it just extends that provision out until August 31st of 2021. So we think that's really good news, and I know I've just mentioned those exams, but it also extends those provisions related to enrollment in a program for CSET requirements and CBEST requirements. So all of those provisions, all 5 of those provisions have been included in trailer bill language, and we're just waiting for it to move through the legislative process to be approved. So you may have some questions related to that. It's possible that that was one of your big questions and that we've just answered it and we can all go home. Oh, no. I don't see anyone logging off, so we'll keep going. Okay, so that was the big update I wanted to share with you all. And I'm actually going to pull up really quick the bill number. It's SB 820 for anyone who wants to go online and read the language there. And again, it's the exact same language of the original EO, but Senate Bill 820. Okay, a couple more small things we wanted to let you know about. One is related to the Declaration of Need, or the DAWN. We had a case recently where a Declaration of Need came in and it was approved at a special board meeting, which wasn't a regularly scheduled board meeting. And, you know, we received a member of the public who inquired about the ability for the district to approve that DON during the special board meeting. And so we had to do some research related to the regulations surrounding the DON. And we did find out that the regulations are very specific. It does say that a DON needs to be approved at a regularly scheduled board meeting. So just so you're all aware, if you have a declaration of need that needs to be, you know, action needs to be taken on it at a board meeting, you do want to make sure that that is done at a regularly scheduled board meeting and not during a special session. We know that right now school boards are having a lot of special sessions just because of the all the decisions that need to be made surrounding the new schedule and COVID and distance learning. But if it's a declaration of need that needs to be voted on, you definitely want to make sure that that's at a regularly scheduled board meeting. And then the other update I wanted to let everyone know, for those of you that are with charter schools, school districts, or county offices of education, you may be wondering what's happening with the assignment monitoring for the 2019-2020 school year. Just to update you all, we are still waiting for the CalPADS data from the California Department of Education, from CDE, to be sent to us. So we have not yet received the 1920 CalPADS data set. So obviously we can't, you know, begin the assignment monitoring process through the new CalSAS system until we receive that data. We are hopeful that we'll get that data around mid-September. Right now, CDE hasn't been able to commit to a specific date to get that data to us, but we're having, you know, weekly conversations with them and working with them to, you know, ensure that we keep you guys in the loop and keep ourselves in the loop so we know what's going on. So once we know more, we will let you know. But the assignment team, it has let me know that if we don't receive the data by September 15th, that they're going to send an official word out via email to all of the monitoring authorities to let them know what the new plan and potential timeline would be. And I know we've stated this before, but once we get data from CDE, it'll probably take a week or two for us to modify that data and get it packaged and prepared to go into the CalSAS system. So probably 2 weeks out from the point when we get the CDE data is when we would start the monitoring. However, we do anticipate opening the system up to create users for monitoring authorities to start sending those invitations to create users out to their districts and charter schools. So keep that in mind. You will be getting information on that shortly as well. We just don't want to open it up too early to the point where, you know, you create users and then you kind of forget about it and forget, you know, what your password is and what to do in the system. So we want to time it so that it's not too early prior to us receiving the data from CDE. But we also want to give you guys a good amount of time to create those users. So we're on top of it. We're keeping, you know, track of the situation, and we will let you know more as it comes available. So that's all the updates I have for you guys. So with that, we'll go ahead and just jump into answering some of these questions. And the first question I see on here from Jenny, please clarify which documents must have a start date no later than 9/1/2020 and which documents must be received by CTC by 9/1/2020. Ladies, either of you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in on that one. So with the documents such as if the person's requesting like a BSR deferral, because they haven't met BSR yet, those would need to have an issue date of 9/1 or before. The 90-day backdating rule does apply, so we can receive an application after 9/1 as long as that issue date is 9/1 or prior. The other document that has that date requirement is also the program sponsored variable term waiver. So those ones can be received up to 90 days after 9/1, but the issue date has to be 9/1 or prior.
All right, thank you, Brittany. Jenny, hopefully that answered your question. If not, go ahead and add further clarification to the chat and we'll hopefully get to it. The next question from Andrew. I wonder if discussion has been had concerning the requirements teachers and or administrators have regarding recording Zoom sessions with students in order to complete their TPAs and APAs. As a district, we have huge concerns over the liability involved in recording Zoom sessions. That is an excellent question. Unfortunately, it's not one that the certification division can answer. That would be a question you might want to pose at the PSD office hours, which they are having fairly regularly as well. The professional services division does handle teacher preparation. I do know that our assessment development team is also having fairly regular office hours. So I wish we could answer that. That's a really good question, but unfortunately that's out of the scope of our work that we do in certification. Next question, are the recruitment efforts required for stepping down to the variable term waiver?
I can go ahead and take that one. So yes, they are required for the board approval for the regular variable term waivers.
Excellent, thank you, Ing. And I know we have some information on the COVID-19 webpage that relates to those requirements. Okay, next question from Anonymous. Oh, good luck. Oh, that's so nice. They're just wishing us luck. Aww. And it's actually Terry Clark, not Anonymous. Thank you, Terry, if you're out there listening. All right, from Nate. Several candidates have had really hard time scheduling CSET exams since last March. Many are not likely to take or pass by January when lead teaching begins. So this is more than likely going to be related to lead teaching with student teaching. And again, that kind of does go into the PSD territory. But I will say that I believe that the executive order would apply here and the extension of that once it comes through the trailer bill. So, you know, they don't need to have completed the CSET examination until they're being recommended for the preliminary credential. So that's a situation where the individual could begin their student teaching prior to having taken and passed the CSET. Am I off base there, ladies, or is that your understanding as well?
No, I think that sounds about right, yeah.
Okay. It's always a little difficult to kind of navigate those questions related to the flexibilities that have to do with the professional services division and their programs, but we will do our best to kind of add our knowledge base as we can. And the next question, any flexibility around subject matter requirement for lead teachers? So I think that's kind of a related question. I'm not sure what we mean by lead teaching. So if you want to clarify that question, Nate, you can add that to the chat and we'll hopefully get a little more information and we can better answer that for you. Okay, Sylvia, if someone received a variable term waiver and is now eligible under the provisions of the EO, could we submit a recommendation for the EO? Yeah, I can take this one. Absolutely. A person having held the program sponsor variable term waiver doesn't affect their ability to be recommended under the provisions of the executive order. So if you've gotten them a program sponsor variable term waiver and they, you know, now they have the flexibility within the executive order, you can go ahead and make that recommendation. So they would, you know, basically get the preliminary credential with the renewal requirements listed and, you know, the variable term waiver would remain valid, but that's okay. That doesn't matter. All right. Next question from Megan. How will we get more details? Will this come from our counties or CTC newsletter? I'm going to take a guess, Megan, and guess that you're referring to assignment monitoring. So if you're referring to assignment monitoring, yes. So the way the system will work for assignment monitoring is that the county office is the monitoring authority for all the districts within their purview. And they're also the monitoring authority for any charter schools that they authorized. If a charter school is authorized by a school district, then the school district will be the monitoring authority for the charter school. CTC will make, will send out user information for all of the monitoring authorities. So if you are a county office, you'll get your invitation to create your user ID and your password from the commission. And then the counties will then send invitations out to all of the districts and charter schools under their purview, and they'll allow that user creation process to start. So information will all come through your monitoring authority. And if you have questions about how that process might work, there is so much information on the Commission's Credential Information Guide on the SIG webpage. If you click on the Employers tab, you'll see Assignments as one of the options under the Employers tab on the SIG. And there is so much CalSAS information. The team has done an excellent job of creating both written, and they're also working on video resources for you guys as well. So that explains the user hierarchy and who creates users in those web pages. So definitely encourage you to take a look at those. Okay, so can you type or repeat the title of the Senate bill and extensions of the EO one more time, please? Let's see, Ing, you want to take that one?
Sure, that would be SB 820. So Senate Bill 820.
Perfect, thank you. I love this feature that says that you would like to answer the question. I didn't know that was there. That is awesome. Okay. Next question from Russ. I understand AB 2485 didn't make it through before the deadline. Are there flexibilities in discussion for CSET in regards to fall DT/student teachers that are student teaching fall 2020? I understand this was done for spring 2020. So what I can tell you about AB 2485 is that the legislative session did not allow for that bill to move forward in the Senate, unfortunately. But the commission is absolutely committed to pursuing all of the bills that did not make it through upon the next legislative cycle. So of course it's a matter of finding a sponsor for the bill and an author. So, you know, once the next legislative cycle begins, we will move forward and attempt to make that happen. So keep your eyes open for information on that. I believe that typically starts around January. Are there flexibilities in discussion for CSET? You know, CSET is a statutory requirement, so there's really nothing that the commission can do beyond seeking that legislation. So, you know, until we get a bill through, we are stuck with the process that we have, other than the flexibilities in the executive order and now the trailer bill. So trust me, we wish we could take that on ourselves, but we do have to go through the legislative process. Okay, next question. For candidates needing a preliminary credential recommendation before the trailer bill is signed, is August 31st the last date of issuance for recommending a candidate for the preliminary credential with the renewal codes TPA, APA, and RICA? I'll take this one. So, sort of. What I have learned about the legislative cycle is that it has to be, they have basically the end of the week. And everything has to be heard and acted on by Monday. So the trailer bill has to be heard, has to go through the Senate and the Assembly prior to Monday. Now, normally that would be really difficult for a typical bill, but because this is a trailer bill related to the budget, we are very confident that it will move through the process by Monday and that it will move forward to the governor for signature. So, you know, again, under normal legislative circumstances, with a normal bill, you know, we wouldn't really know where it might land until all the way through the end of September into October, when the governor could sign or veto. But with the trailer bill related to the budget, we're very confident that it is going to go completely through the process and will likely be signed fairly quickly. So it is retroactive, meaning that once the governor signs it, it actually becomes in effect retroactively on July 1, 2020. So we might have a window where technically we couldn't grant an application with the TPA, APA, or RICA renewal requirement if, say, the bill moves to the governor and it completes the legislative process on Monday, which is the 31st, and then it has to go to the governor for signature. And, you know, it's possible the governor may not be able to sign it immediately. It may take a few days or weeks for the governor to sign it. So there may be a gray area where technically we cannot grant a recommendation with that TPA, APA, or RICA. However, you know, once it's signed, any issuance date after August 31st would be perfectly fine. It would, you know, we would be able to grant it. So I would say just watch the website closely. We will put you know, information on our website once it is signed and into effect. So if you can hold recommendations after the 31st until you get word that it has been signed, that would be the best thing to do. That would be the best way to handle it. If we get a recommendation in-house, we'll probably just keep it pending until we have a signature from the governor so that we can officially grant it. You know, it's kind of a formality, but we technically don't want to grant something and have something strange happen in the process, and then, you know, that document has been issued outside the scope of the law. So that's would be my best advice. Anything else you ladies want to add related to that, how they should handle those recommendations if the bill isn't signed by August 31st?
No, I mean, if you guys submit like a recommendation and you're needing the issue date after 8/31, then like Erin said, if they come in with that issue date after 8/31, then we'll just have to leave it at pen and then wait until that trailer bill is officially signed. Otherwise, if it's 8/31 or prior, go ahead and submit the recommendation.
Perfect. And that brings up a good point. You can submit the recommendation on September 5th, but request an issuance date of 8/31 if the candidate qualified at that time, and then you're okay. So as long as the issuance date is 8/31, then it won't be stuck in that possible gray area. Okay, next question. What about extensions by appeal? Many of our teachers are still struggling to find testing appointments to come off of from emergency permits. Will folks be allowed to apply for more than one extension by appeal for the same document?
I can go ahead and try to answer that one. So the COVID-19 extension by appeal is still effective even after September 1st of 2020. So it is a possible option for extensions by appeal due to COVID-19 can still be extended.
And the regular extension options of the 2-year, 3-year, or the other 1-year good cause options are still available depending on the type of document that they're wishing to extend.
Definitely. So, you know, can someone be able to apply for more than one extension for the same document? You know, extensions are always evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So we can't, you know, an individual is always able to apply for a second extension. And the circumstances will tell us whether we can or cannot issue that second extension. So if you have a specific candidate, I suggest emailing certification division for more information, but you know, it's always an option. They're never guaranteed though. We have to look at the full picture and evaluate on a case-by-case basis.
And also just to add in there that it's only eligible on documents that are eligible for reissuance. So short-term staff permits and provisional internship permits will not qualify.
Thank you for adding that in. Good point. Okay, next question. Our district would like holders of specialist instruction credentials in special education, learning handicap, to have the new standards of mild moderate. How can they update to the new standards for mild moderate? Do they take coursework or have to redo another program? So the current mild moderate credential would require them to basically go to a special education mild moderate program and you know, be evaluated by that program sponsor, and the program sponsor would tell them what they need to complete in order to be comparable to the mild moderate, and they would recommend them for that mild moderate. They may you know, have a certain number of courses that they need to complete. They may have to do the entire program. It would be really up to the program sponsor to do that evaluation. And they can grant equivalencies for some of the courses or the preparation that was done for the learning handicap program, but that's at the discretion of the program sponsor. So yes, it's possible. Got to go through a program sponsor to do it. Okay, next question. How much synchronous supervision will be required? Program sponsors are finding that access to the district virtual classroom is an issue. District email address is required, making asynchronous supervision necessary. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to punt this one to the professional services division. I would recommend sending your question to PSD. You can email it to psdinfo@ctc.ca.gov, and hopefully they can help you with that one, because you know, unfortunately, certification is we're not in the program sponsor world. So, all right, next one. Will the CTC continue to accept electronic signatures? Also, the date section of the 41-4 is not easy to complete electronically, and several of our teachers have had their applications returned because the month or year is only partially there. Oh, that's not good. Britnie, anything you want to say on this one?
I mean, current except if the application needs to be reviewed by our Division of Professional Practices, we do require a wet ink signature. And in regards to the date not being in there fully, the only thing I can think of is like maybe trying to change the text box on the PDF to be smaller. Yeah, I think that's just the PDF program thing, so trying to make it smaller. But yeah, as of right now, we're still accepting the electronic signatures.
Perfect. And to clarify, the Division of Professional Practices would need a wet ink signature if someone checks yes to any of those professional fitness questions. So if you have an applicant that checks yes to any of those questions, be sure to let them know they do need to sign that application because it needs to be an original signature. But if you have someone that has not, checked yes to any of those professional fitness questions, then we can do that electronic signature. There are rare cases, but it has happened where someone checks no on all of those professional fitness questions, but they're still flagged by the Division of Professional Practices based on their background information that we receive from either the FBI or the Department of Justice. So if you get a notice from either the Certification Division or DPP that we do need that ink signature, that would be why. So you might be thinking, they didn't mark yes to anything. Why are you asking me for the ink signature? Well, that would be why, because they've been flagged through their background information by DPP, and so they need to have that original signature. Okay, next question. Several of our bilingual authorization candidates completed their coursework this summer and are now unable to apply for the authorization as they still need CSET Spanish Subtest 3 and it is not being offered at testing centers. Is there any action in the works that would help them? Yeah, this is a tough one. As of right now, there isn't any action in the works for this specific subset of candidates, but we can definitely pass this on to the executive office and the professional services division and let them know that these candidates are running into this roadblock and basically inform them of this situation. So thanks for bringing this one up, Christy, and we will bring this forward to the powers that be for sure. From Megan, how do we find PSD office hours times? That's a great question. I'm assuming that it would be in the PSD e-news that comes out on Friday. Is that right, Britnie?
Yes, they are listed on there every Friday when those newsletters come out.
Okay, so if you're not subscribed to the PSD e-news, you can do that through the contacts link on the Commission's webpage. Just go to contacts on the main page, and I think you have to select other contacts. And if you ladies know, please correct me, but I think that that's how you get to it. Mm-hmm. Through contacts. I know that.
Yes.
So you can subscribe to their e-news announcements, and every Friday they send out a newsletter, and the office hours are published in that newsletter. Okay, next question. I thought I read something about some applications needing to be received by the Commission by 9/1/2020. I'm wondering now if that was an application coming directly from an applicant, not an LEA. Yeah, I'm thinking that that would be the circumstance, because obviously the direct application from an applicant wouldn't be able to be backdated with that 90-day rule. So they would, if they're going to take advantage of any of those Commission flexibilities related to the CBEST deferral, for example, they would need to get their application to us by September 1, 2020. All right, next question. How long will educators who use COVID flexibilities to defer exams have to complete any exam? Okay. For this one, so how long will they have? So if we're talking COVID flexibilities related to the CBEST deferral, why don't you take that in? Answer it in relation to the CBEST deferral.
That deferral would be good for 1 year.
So they'll have 1 year to complete that exam if it's for the CBEST deferral. Now, if it's for the provisions of the executive order, so that would be RICA or the teaching performance assessment or the administrator performance assessment, they have to complete that prior to being issued their clear credential. So their preliminary credential is 5 years. They would need to complete those exams or the assessments within 5 years if they don't want to have a gap in their credential. If they want to retire from teaching for a little while, they don't have to complete them until they're ready to apply for the clear credential.
And also too, for those that are entering into a program based on the EO for the BSR or the subject matter, those need to be completed before they're recommended for the preliminary credential. So that can take however long the intern credential is, 2 years, 3 years, or if they withdraw, then however long it takes for them to go back into the program.
Perfect. So it really depends on what provision of flexibility they're applying under, and what the situation is, what exam it is that they're either deferring or pushing off to the clear credential, or deferring for program enrollment. So it depends. Okay, what executive order options can be used for those currently on intern credentials? Okay, so for this one, the two executive order options related to CSET not being required for program enrollment or for issuance of the intern credential, and CBEST not being required for program enrollment, are already options for them to use. And if they complete the intern program, say they are going to complete within the next year, right? They're going to complete prior to August 31st, 2021, once the trailer bill language is in effect, then they could possibly have their preliminary credential recommendation submitted without completion of the RICA or the TPA. So they can get into the program and begin the intern program without CBEST and without CSET, but they need to complete those prior to being recommended for the preliminary. Once they get the preliminary, they can have that preliminary issued without RICA, and that would just be listed as a renewal requirement, or without TPA, and that would also be listed as a renewal requirement. Hopefully that shed some light on that topic. Okay. Next question from Francisco. I currently have someone who finished their summer classes and has met the requirements for his undergrad degree. However, our institution doesn't confer summer degrees until mid-September, early October. Should we apply for a program sponsor variable term waiver, or do we wait for the new SB 820 to pass and then recommend him for a preliminary credential with a TPA renewal requirement? Or how should I proceed? August 31st, 2020 deadline is not working to his favor. Okay, let's kind of dissect this a little bit. So you have someone who's finishing their undergrad degree, and that seems to be the last piece of coursework that they need to complete. But they haven't completed TPA. So the question is, we're waiting till mid-September, early October for that degree to be conferred. Do we suggest recommending for the program sponsor variable term waiver, or waiting and recommending for the preliminary? I think that if there's any way you can recommend him for the preliminary, absolutely go for that and wait if you can. If the candidate is seeking employment now, that's a different case, and you could apply for the program sponsor variable term waiver now. That would allow them to begin teaching, and then recommend for the preliminary based on the EO provisions once the degree is conferred. So the program sponsor variable term waiver, you'd be waiving both the degree requirement because it hasn't been conferred yet, and the TPA. And then that could serve for the educator to serve as a teacher on until the degree is conferred, and then you could recommend for the preliminary credential. So that could be one option. They're going to have to pay 2 application fees within a few months of each other, but that's definitely an option. So.
And also keep in mind for the program sponsor waiver, the deadline is September 1st. So that needs to be submitted right away if that's the route that you're planning on taking.
Absolutely. So I think really communicating with the candidate to find out, if they are planning on, or if they have a job lined up, obviously you need to really jump on it pretty quickly. But it's an option. It's just going to be, back-to-back applications and fees for that educator. So, okay. Next question. Can you tell me what the time frame is on applications being documented as received and paid for? So I'm guessing that's being viewable in the online system. you want to take that one, Britnie?
Yeah, so it kind of varies week by week, but right now it's taking 2 to 3 weeks or so for when an application is received to when it's keyed into our database to be viewable on the Commission's website. Once it is entered into our database, the educator will receive an email that their application is pending, and then they'll be able to see it, or you as the employers will also be able to monitor through the secured search on our website the status of the application.
And Britnie, do you want to talk a little bit about why that time fluctuates and why it's 2 to 3 weeks right now?
It's really staff that's in the office in order to actually be able to key in. So we do have a limited number of staff that is in the office entering in those applications. And right now we are in our busy season. So we receive hundreds of pieces of mail a day. And so that can take a lot of time for us to open, review, make sure that the application itself is complete, just those 5 pages, that the fee is correct, in order for it to move into that process where it is ready to be keyed into our database.
Awesome, thanks. And that's why we all hope that we can have online applications someday soon. We're working on it. Mm-hmm. Okay, next question. Will we still need to upload verification for APA, TPA, Rica Passage with the recommendations? If so, how long will this be required since Ctc also receives these reports? Absolutely, still got to do this. And it's going to continue until we can be sure that we are getting all the reports, because right now the testing centers are actually not sending them all to us. So unfortunately, that data transmission is not 100% reliable, and therefore it will need to continue for the foreseeable future. We'll let you know if this changes, but right now you do still have to send those in. Okay. Next question, is CBEST also deferred to preliminary credential? So early childhood specialists, students can proceed with student teaching. So CBEST is not deferred to the preliminary credential unless someone is applying under the CBEST deferral option, which is about to end. So CBEST will still need to be completed prior to issuance of the preliminary credential if someone's in a program. So they get they don't have to complete CBEST in order to enroll in the program, but during the period of the program, they need to pass or meet the basic skills requirement prior to being recommended for the preliminary. You may or may not be aware that there was a bill that was working its way through the legislature that would allow an individual to use coursework, college credit for meeting the basic skills requirement for reading, writing, and math. And unfortunately, with many bills this year, they just weren't able to get through them all due to COVID. So it didn't go anywhere, but that is a bill that the Commission isn't specifically sponsoring, but that we were working closely with the author, and we anticipate some similar topic moving forward at the next legislative session. So we're hopeful that that can continue to find a path forward and give individuals more options for meeting the basic skills requirement. That bill would have also allowed a candidate to mix and match. So say they, had taken one portion of the CBEST exam and passed, but they failed the other two, they would be able to use coursework to meet those other two areas. So, right now there's only the provision to defer the CBEST until the person's completed all the requirements to get the preliminary, but they do have to have it met prior to being issued the preliminary, but it's possible that legislation in the near future could make that a little bit easier for these candidates. So, okay, next question. Can a private school teacher with 6+ years of teaching experience request a credential directly through the CTC with the Rica deferral based on their teaching experience?
I can go ahead and take this one.
All right.
Yes, they can go ahead and request that deferral for the Rica requirement as long as they have met all of the other requirements under the private school teaching route.
Awesome. Thank you, Ing. Yeah, that's a big one. We know that there are probably quite a few candidates who are in that that situation. So yes, they can apply directly. Okay, next question is from Maria. We have 2 candidates who just began our program on August 3rd, and both have taken all 3 sections of the CBEST exam and have not passed all sections. The chart in Q1 indicates that they are not eligible for the deferral, but in Q12 it says that the executive order suspends the requirement for all entering candidates to have passed basic skills. Do we need to report these 2 candidates to the CTC by 9/1? And if so, whom do we send the notification?
If they're entering into the program based on the EO, we do not need to be notified that they are waiving BSR. We just need to see when they are recommended for that preliminary credential that they have met the basic skills requirement.
Thanks, Brittany. Yeah, so they can be moving and making progress in the program without having met basic skills. You just need to make sure that they pass that exam prior to being recommended for the preliminary.
And I also just want to point out that the executive order does supersede the flexibilities that were approved by the commission.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. That's, I mean, you know, it's an executive order. They have executive powers that we don't have. Okay, next question from Andrew. I just asked about the idea of teachers taping sessions, but I wonder about student teachers needing to tape lessons involving students in order to complete their coursework and work towards obtaining a preliminary credential. Again, super good question, Andrew. That again, we're going to pump that one to the professional services division. So if it's assessment related to the TPA, you could contact the teaching performance assessment division, and that's headed by Amy Rising. And I believe you can find Amy's email address in the link that has the commission management information in there. But if it's related to student teaching and completing specific program requirements, not just the TPA, then that could go to professional services division. And if you just email that question to PSD, they'll get it to the assessment folks as well. So they'll forward it on for you. Okay. Next question. Will you consider other ways to send out reject letters since most campuses are closed and do not have access to mail? Oh, excellent question, anonymous attendee, whomever you are. We would absolutely love to just be able to begin sending reject letters via email. There's nothing we want more. Unfortunately, we are required to send them out via mail right now because of the requirement that an individual be noticed in that way. We are looking at options, and we actually, prior to COVID, we're looking at the ability for our system to send out emails of reject letters in addition to the paper copy. And then COVID happened and we went into crisis mode, and that project kind of got put on the back burner, which I know probably doesn't make sense, but unfortunately we were really operating in kind of an emergency operational status to try to get our staff out on telework, and then to get guidance out related to all these flexibilities and EO provisions and whatnot. So now that we're kind of settled back into we have a routine, things have kind of calmed down, we have the extension of the EO happening through the trailer bill, we are picking back up on looking at some of those options. We have a short-term potential solution for sending email reject letters that we still are exploring, and there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of things we have to look into to see if that will work. And then we also have a long-term solution for something that would be more permanent. But of course, long-term solutions always take a while. So we're working on it as hard as we can. And trust me, we know how much easier it would make your lives and our lives if we could just flip the switch and start sending them out via email. But it's something that we really have to explore and do a lot of research and work with our IT team to make sure we have the capabilities to even do it, because our system is, it is a state budgeted system, so it has limitations.
One thing that you can do right now as a workaround is that if you do see on the status of the person's application has been returned for additional information, you can send an email to Credentials at ctc.ca.gov and ask what the letter says, and we can provide that information in that email, so then you can use that to print out and include with whatever additional documentation is being requested.
Awesome advice, Brittany. Yeah, I know that does take a little bit of a step to email us and inquire if you see that it's been returned for additional information, but that is an option to get that information a little bit quicker so that you're not waiting for something in the mail. Okay, so next question. If a student was supposed to graduate in spring 2019 but had not passed their TPA, could they be recommended for a preliminary credential, or is this only for students graduating spring 2020? So right now, as the law is written, based on the executive order, it could be for any candidate who was set to complete their program for the 2019-2020 year. But when the trailer bill language gets approved, it'll be any student who's set to complete their program for the 2020-2021 year. So if you hold tight, soon it will include students graduating spring of 2020. Okay, next question. Can you please clarify and give scenarios of what credential documents the CBEST deferral can be used for?
That would be any document that requires the basic skills. So it can be a short-term staff permit, a 30-day sub permit, a provisional internship permit, any of the sub permits actually. I know there's a 10 more on there. Oh, the TPSL. Yeah. I know we've been getting a lot more questions in regards to that. The TPSL would qualify for that BSR deferral, but just do remember that the issue date has to be 9/1 or prior for any of those to come in.
Thanks, Brittany. So for those not familiar with the ability for an LEA to request an issuance date earlier than the date we received the application, we call this the 90-day rule. It's in regulations, and it allows us to grant an issuance date that is no more than 90 days earlier than the date we received the application. So if you guys get us an application by December 1, 2020, we can grant that with a deferral of the CBEST if the issuance date you request in that little box in the upper right-hand corner of page 1 of the application is September 1, 2020. So you do have a little bit more time to take advantage of this deferral option. Now, keep in mind, the deferral will be 1 year starting September 1, 2020. So they don't get a year as of December 1, 2020. They get a year as of the issuance date of the document. Okay. So next question here. I just want to be clear that the flexibility that was granted at the April Commission meeting that allowed programs to admit candidates for fall 2020 without subject matter should be extended as well. Absolutely, that actually has been superseded by the executive order. So you can admit candidates who have not met the subject matter requirement through CSET based on the provisions of the executive order. Am I missing anything there, ladies?
Nope.
Okay, excellent. All right, next question. We're asking for a repeat of the internship information. Will students be able to go on an internship credential without all of the requirements? Yes, so to repeat one more time, absolutely, the provisions of the executive order and the trailer bill language, once it is approved, allow a candidate to enroll in and be issued an intern credential without having met the CBEST or the CSET requirements. So yes, that is going to continue once the trailer bill language is signed through August 31 of 2021. So all candidates that you're enrolling now and that you enroll for the spring term can be issued that internship credential without having met the CBEST and the CSET requirements. Okay, next question. Do all change of District 41-4 applications, I'm thinking change of restriction, maybe? That's probably what this means. Do all change of restriction applications have to be sent in by mail, or can these be done online?
Those have to be mailed in. unfortunately. There's not an online option to change the restriction for the intern credentials.
Yeah, sorry. That's on our list of things to enhance our system with, but you know, it's a long list. So follow up to that question, if someone has a current credential and is adding an education specialist, does this also have to be mailed in on a paper application?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Absolutely. So if you're adding an authorization, you're the program sponsor, the individual has completed the additional special education area, you wouldn't want to recommend them online because then they'll have 2 special education credentials. So you do want to mail in a paper application with the Form 41 REC included to verify that they completed that program. Okay, question from Rebecca. When an individual's final requirement for a credential is a CTC requirement, example, CBEST, Cal TPA, Cal APA, once the official score report is received, can the effective date of the credential be backdated to the date the exam was taken or submitted, or can it only be backdated to the date of the score report? I'm trying to work my way through this one. So I'm thinking that we're referring to the issuance date of the recommendation. Rebecca, you might have to email this one to us with a little bit more information, unless you ladies have a better grasp on this one than I do.
I mean, it sounds like they're trying to refer maybe to the date of passage, because that's what we look for is when the exams are passed. That's when the issue date needs to be. So it can't say they passed the exam on August 1st, but they took it on June 6th. You'd have to go based on the August 1st date because that would be the date of passage. So any of those issue dates you need to look at when did they officially pass that exam and then the issue date from there. And then just remember that if you're submitting an application after it was passed, then make sure that that issue date falls within our 90-day rule that Erin had explained.
Perfect. I think you got it, Britnie. I think you understood it better than I did. Awesome. Okay, next question. If someone was reviewed for professional fitness and they provided all the paperwork last year when they applied for an emergency CLAD, do they need the same paperwork sent again? Educators having a difficult time obtaining copies again, especially with offices closed due to COVID. Last year, the documents were sent directly to the professional fitness division and she doesn't have copies.
I would ask I'm assuming that they're referring to the additional documentation for the yes answer. I would verify with our Division of Professional Practices what exactly may or may not need to be submitted. With the application itself, when it's submitted, we need to see that there's an explanation to that yes answer. Any supporting documents after that will be up to our DPP.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely right. And I can add a little bit more insight to that. Brittany's right, you know, if it's the same incident that the individual is reporting and they're checking a yes answer, the application itself does need to have an explanation, but that can be as simple as just the educator's written explanation for what the situation was. If it's the same conviction or situation, more than likely, and I'm just going to preface this with more than likely, the educator would not need to submit additional information. So I think that what our advice would be to go ahead and submit the application with just the written explanation of the situation that caused the educator to have to mark yes. And don't worry right now about getting that additional documentation. If they need it, the Division of Professional Practices will contact the educator and let her know what they need. But more than likely, if it's the same situation, same conviction, they're likely not going to need any information because issuance of the emergency CLAD previously cleared that review. So I think you could proceed with cautious optimism that you don't need any additional documentation, but there's always that possibility. Okay, next question. Will SB 820 extend the EO allowing candidates to become interns without the CSET test? Yep, it absolutely will. All 5 of those provisions that the executive order covered, which is TPA, Teaching Performance Assessment, APA, Administrative Performance Assessment, RICA, the Reading Competency Examination, being pushed out to a clear credential requirement, and the CSET examination and the CBEST requirements for enrollment in or issuance of an intern credential or enrollment in a program are all included in the trailer bill language. Exact same words, the only change is the dating. So instead of August 31, 2020 being the final date for that executive order flexibilities, trailer bill changes it to August 31 of 2021. Okay. Next question, if a candidate that hasn't passed their TPA can be recommended for a preliminary, what if the program sponsor isn't willing to do so? I'm sure you guys have gotten a lot of questions like this from the public. What are staff telling folks in these situations?
Refer back to the program. I mean, it really is up to the program's decision on whether or not they're going to be recommending a candidate for that preliminary credential.
Yeah, yep, that's absolutely right. Okay, question from Kate. Can an ASC, that's an Administrative Services Credential, Tier 1 candidate apply for a variable term waiver if they cannot complete the APA Cycle 3 performance assessment due to pre-K through 12 school closures as a result of the shelter in place? More broadly, for the ASC program, will there be the same adjustments by the CTC during COVID-19 for the 2021 year that were put in place last semester? So for this candidate who's unable to complete the Cal APA due to COVID-19, you actually don't want to pursue the variable term waiver. You actually have the ability as the program sponsor to recommend them for the preliminary credential, as Britnie was just mentioning, based on the provisions of the executive order. And once the trailer bill language has been authorized, it'll be through the trailer bill language. So that will go all the way until August 31, 2021. Again, for those that missed it. I say it a lot. Okay. Hopefully I didn't just lose my spot in the questions. Oh dear. Okay, good. Whew. All right, so we've got 2 minutes left, so let's try to get through a couple more. Question about a certificate of clearance. We have a few enrolled candidates about to start clinical practice. Their certificate of clearance haven't been processed yet. It seems like perhaps there may be certificate of clearance processing delays due to COVID. Has there been any word about processing delays for COCs? And if so, any guidance about what to do if candidates don't have the COC cleared yet due to processing times? I'm happy to speak to this. So internally for the certification division who processes certificates of clearance when they come in through online recommends, there are no delays. They are being processed, what would you say, Britnie, 2 to 3 business days at the most?
If their fingerprints are on file, they're pretty much within 24 hours. They're issued and viewable on the commission's website.
Yes. So any delays where a certificate of clearance isn't immediately granted would be because the individual either they haven't gotten fingerprints in and their fingerprint information hasn't been linked to our information in the commission's database, or they have some type of yes answer or some type of blip on their record that is requiring Division of Professional Practices to review. So if they're clear, they're going to get granted almost immediately. If they have review or they don't have their fingerprints on file with us, that's what is going to take a while. So now if there's a delay related to fingerprint processing, that would be outside of the purview of the commission. That's done by the Department of Justice and the FBI. I did recently hear that they aren't experiencing delays at the Department of Justice or the FBI that we're aware of. Our Division of Professional Practices said they're I think 2 weeks out for standard fingerprint processing. So just to kind of keep that in mind, it may just be a case where you have a few candidates who are requiring additional review. You can check the status online, and if it says pending additional evaluation, then that means it is under review by the Division of Professional Practices. So that'll give you an idea of where that's at. Unfortunately, if they haven't been processed, they can't move forward with that clinical practice. They do need that fingerprint clearance and the certificate of clearance in order to move forward with that clinical practice.
And also sometimes there's a delay because the applicant fingerprinted under a different social security number or a different name. And so we have to be able to verify that information before we can clear them on fingerprints.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes that can definitely cause a problem. All right. I think we got through quite a few questions. I'm pretty impressed. Either you guys just didn't have a lot of questions for us or we're extra speedy. I don't know. We'll pat ourselves on the back a little bit with that one. Okay, so we are at the end of our 1 hour time. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up with a big thank you to all of you for joining us. And my sincerest thank you to Ing and Britnie for being on here and answering your questions with me. And we are looking for future dates to be able to host an additional office hours within the next 2 to 4 weeks. So look for that. That will also be announced through the certification e-news. So again, if you have colleagues who didn't get this notification, you can send them to the Commission's contact information on our webpage so that they can sign up for the e-news, or you're always welcome to forward that link to anyone who might need it. So thanks a lot, you guys. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon. And send your additional questions to credentials@ctc.ca.gov. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.